Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sister.
Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, I am hearing you.
Okay. I would like to welcome each one of us here present on our 7th seminar series on the year of St. Joseph. And today we are going to reflect on fatherhood and the challenge of poverty in African family. We'll be honored to have Mr. Frank Lawrence to be with us today, who is going to be our main speaker. We'll introduce him in a short while. In the meantime, I would like to kindly request Father George, our spiritual director, to lead us in a word of prayer. Father George, kindly.
So welcome. We are happy to entrust this our seminar, this reflection under the patronage of Saint Joseph, the father of our families, father of the church. We begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We can say the prayer together as it is projected. Hail, guardian of the Redeemer, spouse of the Blessed Virgin Mary, to you God entrusted His Holy Son. In you Mary placed her trust. With you Christ became man. Blessed Joseph, show us to show yourself a Father and guide us in the path of life. Obtain for us grace, mercy, and courage, and defend us from every evil. Amen. Saint Joseph, Master of interior life, teach us to pray, to suffer, and to be silent. Saint Joseph, organize our seminar today. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy
Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Joseph, pray for us. Mary, seat of wisdom, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father George, for that prayer. Because I can see we are not many, kindly, if possible, put your cameras on, especially those who are going to be the main speaker and the panelist. Kindly put your videos on. I wish to introduce our speaker for this afternoon is Mr. Frank Lawrence. Mr. Frank Lawrence is born in Kenya in 1960. He resides at South B and a member of Our Lady of Queen of Peace. He is married to two grown daughters and a grandson. He holds diploma in telecommunication from Kenya Polytechnic and high diploma in counseling psychology at Amani Counseling Center and also addiction counseling at SEPTA. His work experience involved, he had worked with telecoms for 19 years, Alcatel in 17 years, and retired in 2017. Presently, Mr. Frank Lawrence is advisory with Dorothea Girls Rehabilitation Center, Mukuru Promotion Center, Euphrasia Women Group, Levegerie Lay Association, and also is a friend of Philothea Missionary. Welcome, Mr. Frank Lawrence. I hope you are already here. Kindly put your video on so that we can see you.
Sister, it is on. Thank you very much, Sister Florence.
So you're most welcome to guide us through this first talk. You have 45 minutes, and thereafter you'll be joined by one panelist to discuss more on the theme of our talk today, fatherhood and the challenge of poverty in the African family. Kindly, you're most welcome, Frank.
Okay, thank you very much, Sister.
You can now share your slide.
Yes, just hang on a minute. Sister, can you see it?
Yes, I can. Put it on full screen,
Yeah. Yes,
on presentation mode.
yes, I'm trying to do. Yeah, okay, there it is.
Okay. Yeah, excellent.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Father George. Thank you, Sister Florence, for the invite, and thank you for all my listeners who are out there. And I will see if I can make some justice to my presentation. And for this, we are going to have it in two parts. Part one is the introduction, then definitions on what poverty is. Then you have types of poverty, causes and results of poverty. And well, I shouldn't say results, but the impact of poverty. Then the second part we have is the Catholic principles, life and dignity of the human. These I have chosen three parts from the Catholic principles to bring out what I wanted to bring about the human, about the poverty that is in the African male. So the three parts are of life and dignity of the human, call to family, community, and participation, and the dignity of the work and rights of workers. So the introduction first. This is poverty is a global social problem that has been studied globally, mostly as economical, but it's also a social and political, economically also. And we have to be able to look at most of these things in all those dimensions. And when you look at them, also you have to be able to look at it from a cultural point of view, so that you can be able to understand some of these things where they come from. And when I talk also of cultural, I have also to be able to tell you that this is also a perception on poverty, because poverty is relative to one's eyes and ideas on how they perceive to be poor. For example, that you may be having two people in the same family, but maybe one, because they have gone to be materially more better wise, they will be looked upon as having walked out of poverty, they are better off, though they may have another poverty, which could be emotional poverty. So these are things that you have to. As I was going through this preparation, I had forgotten about the mental health part, because this is the month of September is the month of prevention of suicide. And yesterday night, I got some figures that were quite interesting, which may help us also understand some of the things that are ongoing in the country presently. And what they have found out is that 90% of the suicide cases that have taken place are by male persons, and only 10% by the females. And we will see this as we go along, why and how they came about. The second part, which was quite interesting for me, which I think also will bring this out later on also, is the percentage of those who have gone into suicide because of their financial status. Now, as you can see here, there are two interesting things, and it's almost about 50% of the people who have committed suicide are actually below minimum wages or are from the poor society, because you see they are just very close together, 24 and 26%. And this is very important in the sense that, especially now in Kenya, as we can see, there's a lot of, especially after COVID, we have seen a lot of people who have lost their jobs, people who have not known how to take care of their family. And this has shifted them to bringing out that animalistic thing in them to be able to survive by committing suicide. So next thing we go is, how do we define poverty? The basis on most of poverty is went up. Most of the basis of poverty is based on the UN, and the UN statement on definition of poverty is a severe deprivation of human needs, including food, safe drinking water, sanitation facilities, health, shelter, education, and information. And more important out of that is that there is a threshold line that they have created, that anybody living below that threshold is considered to be under poverty. And that is approximately about $2 per day, which roughly works out to be about 200 shillings, Kenya shillings per day. And poverty, of course, which also has a lot of effect on the person's life. And that is now one of the reasons why we have to be careful on when we are dealing with poverty, how we define it and whom we are defining it. And then there are types of poverty. And we have to be able to look at this from different angles. There is the economical and the socio-political and economical ways of identifying this. There is the absolute, relative, situational poverty, generational poverty, rural, urban poverty. I will not go too deep into all of this, but just a little bit of this thing for you to be able to understand. We define absolute poverty when there's a deprivation of complete basic human needs, which is food, water, hygiene, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and education. And this, we can, a lot of times we can be able to see it, especially in our different, what would I call them? I wouldn't call them, I don't like the word slums, I would call them the informal sector. Because those are things that when you go in there, you will see a lot of them that are not there. Then we have the relative poverty. This is now a comparison between two individuals or two people of different social, what could I call it, standings. There are those who may have a lot of material wealth, and there are those who don't. But that doesn't mean that it is only between the rich and the poor. No, even between the poor, they have their own relative poverty between them, in the sense that maybe one may have some things which the other person doesn't happen to have, so they will look at themselves at a higher level than the other one. The next one, which is also quite important, especially in Kenya, is exclusion poverty. This is a deprivation and marginalization of people from the social and economic activities of society. This was very prevalent, especially before the Constitution of 2010, when we set up the counties. During my years in telecom, I had the opportunity to travel virtually through most of Kenya, and you could actually see that a lot of the places, especially outside the towns, development was very much at a standstill. I had the opportunity recently to be able to visit Kakamega, and I was very surprised when I saw all the new developments that was ongoing in that place. And one of the things I found out, it is much, much better than what it was. Of course, now as we look at exclusion poverty, I also look at it from the point of view of COVID. COVID was a game changer in society. And the change that it brought into society was interesting in the sense that we had the political class that were already up somewhere very far from everybody else. And the people who are left there, most of their, what could I don't think I would call them subject, but most of the people who got them into the counties who never used to bother really to an extent of that. I'll give you an example, for example, like the hospitals. In most of the county hospitals were run down. Most of them did not have medicine. Most of them did not have basic facilities. But when COVID came in, the whole world shut down. So there was no way for the political class who could jump into an aircraft and go to Dubai, India, Europe, or South Africa for treatment. So they were forced by circumstances to ensure that this thing, the hospitals there came to a certain standard. Okay. Also, there are different types of different types of poverty, which I won't go really much into it. There's the economic poverty, bodily, mental, cultural, spiritual, political, and societal. And what I would like, the one from here, what I would like to talk about generally, two of them is economic and political. Now, economic, a lot of times you find that in the informal sector, we have a lot of the people who are living below the $2 per day, who don't have basic things like food and proper shelter. And if you have been to these informal sectors, you will understand what I mean by the basic shelter, basic facilities in living, because there is, first of all, no sewers. So everything just flows through gutters, which are not really, healthy for the people to live around. And this, again, was very much noticed, or came out really much more into the fore when we had the initial COVID lockdowns. The people could not go out and get their basic food, they could not be able to live. And so a lot of help was requested from different societal people who were able to provide it and be able to make things easier for us. Political. Unfortunately, the political class for me have taken over virtually kind of hijacked the whole human being in society, in the sense that they would like to think for them, they would like to be able to give them solutions, they would like to do everything, but it is all being done with one thing in mind, that they remain in power. For me, I believe that if you're a political leader, if you end up enhancing your people, giving them knowledge, empowering them, then you have a better group of people. Some of the causes of poverty. One is population explosion. Two, there are limited resources. Three, weak institutions. The most important one, of course, is lack of education or literacy. And one of the biggest causes of poverty in Africa, especially, is corruption. And this is not so much of a topic to talk about corruption, but it is one of those things that if we can be able to reduce them, and we can be able to see how best we can be able to do them. One may ask, how come population explosion is there? When you have an explosion of population, especially if you go into the informal sector, you will find that the number of children are so high that the other issues that come together with it, limited resources, lack of education, all follow in. And then after that, you have to find that people have to go into corruption to be able to survive somehow or the other. So what is the impact of poverty? One of the biggest impacts of poverty is there is a lack of a child's readiness for school. Because from the time he wakes up in the morning, his being is not ready. First of all, he may have not slept well that night, because where he has been sleeping, there has been a lot of noise, there has been a lot of fights, there have been maybe fires. There are those, again, who may not have adequate food to be able to eat. And if I talk about food again, we have to be a little bit, knowledgeable here. I think it's 2 years back ago, or was it 1 year ago? I'm not very sure. I can't remember the exact time. The Kenya government had sent out a message to some of our international donors that Kenya is able now to be able to sustain looking after their children in the schools. I work in some of these schools, and I can see some of those children where their only meal was in the school, it is not there anymore. So without that food, how does the child sit the whole day in class? It is not possible. In the same aspect, if you go to a public school, a class can be able to hold anything from 50 to 100 students, especially in the lower classes. This is not possible for one teacher, because as per the guidelines, it's only one teacher to a maximum of 30 students. So you can imagine one teacher and 50. And this is the same student who is expected to fight with somebody else who is in a class in a in a private sector where there is 1 to 20 to 30 students. So these are some of the effects that you can be able to get. So this child is already affected from the time it is gone. The next thing is the child. How is he? Illnesses. Because I'm from South B and I know quite a bit of the area, we have a lot of air pollutions, especially from the industrial area. So a lot of children here suffer from chest issues. So you can imagine that this person cannot be able to go back into class because he is sick. And another important one, which we thank the government, after COVID, again, I have to thank COVID again for this, because after COVID came in, a lot of water points were built in the different informal sectors. Here in South B, we have one at the Chiefs Camp, so people can go and get water from there and be able to live a decent life. Thank you very much for that first part. Now I go into the second part. And for those of us who are Catholics, will know that we have something we call the principles of the social teaching. There are about 7 of them, but I've taken 3 major ones, which I will expand later on. Now, this is where we get into the deep part of our discussion. The first one is life and dignity of the human person. The second one is the call to family, community, and participation. And the last one is the dignity of work and the rights of workers. And when I started off this, looking at this topic, I could not figure out everything. And I wanted it to be more encompassing. So I did send out a couple of friends of mine to please, give me what feedback they have. And some of the things that they have brought is what I have put in. I may not talk about all of them as you may see them written here, but I will give preference to what I think is some of the main issues that keep men into poverty especially in the African context. So when we look at life and dignity of the human person, the first question comes is why the dignity? How do you handle that? How did the dignity of the human being be affected? So if you look at Genesis 1:26-17, it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. So with us as human beings, we have to have that dignity. And that is how one of the most important things that you have to have in human life, a human dignity. And earlier on this afternoon, earlier on in the morning, there was another seminar I was attending of the from the Jesuits, and one of the things was one of the presenters said he was human. He was a refugee somewhere in West Africa, and one of the things that really affected him was that loss of dignity, because when he ran away to this new place, he could not be treated like a normal human being. He was looked on as a lesser being than what he was. And this really got his self-esteem down. And so it's the same thing that we have when we find ourselves in our society right now. Here it is. We know from the biblical time to societal that man has been the sole breadwinner. And his work was to make sure that he brings food home and ensures that the family is able to feed. But he's not able to do that now. So what happens? There are a number of things that go on together with him, and we'll go there with them as we go slowly. First of all, his self-esteem is broken down completely. So what is this thing called self-esteem? You look down at your fellow man, you find that they are living in a better housing situation. They are able to have access to water and proper sewage systems. And then you find out what happened. Why me? I cannot live like my other men. So this dwells on the man a lot. And this brings in issues. Later on, we will see them in the family. The next thing is, this man also has a lot of cultural processes that he has to follow. I had the chance of working with some refugees also 2 years ago. And those ones, I was shocked when I found one of a young men. He was about 40, and he told me he has 10 children. A refugee in Kenya with 10 children, and he tells me that is still not enough. So I was taken aback a bit, and I asked him, so what do you mean? So he told me where he comes from. As he was, first of all, a senior person, he's a man, he has to have not less than 15 children. So what he is still not. So some of these cultural practices makes one to remain in poverty, because as a refugee here, how does he take care of even 10 children? It's a big struggle. Now, the next is due to the breakdown in society. Now, when I talk of breakdown, I'm talking of the general society as a whole, especially the African society, where when you were living in villages, the parents, apart from being the only one educating the children in morals and ethics, you had the grandparents, you had the uncles, you had the neighbors, which is not there in the modern world. And whilst when you are again in the informal sector, these are not there. So you cannot be able to have any kind of morals or any ethics to be built in you. So what do? You find yourself not having ethics that can be able to inculcate into the children things that you can be able to make them to be able to live like a human, not like a human being, but like a man or a woman, because those practices are not there within you. Now, one of the things that comes out of all this, because of you not being able to sustain that kind of thing, I would say this is not only for the, let me not say this, I'm talking for the informal sector, because we also have another problem on the other side of those people who have the money. And this is where now the other one, which we call the sponsor syndrome. The sponsor syndrome is, again, where you have one wife, but a number of girlfriends on the side, and you have to be able to take care of them. I was shocked. A few days ago, my daughter told me a friend of hers has somebody she knows who has about 5 different girlfriends whom he's sponsoring, compared to plus his wife, so 6 people. So if he doesn't have all that money, he will end up being into poverty, to go into the informal sector again. So the other things that can be able to bring in poverty, this is especially in Africa, where we have a lot of armed conflict and diseases, and also calamities like floods. Last year we had a lot of what they call it, grasshoppers that came in to be able to devour a lot of our areas. And armed conflict is a very huge drain on the resources of us all here in Nairobi, in Kenya, and Africa as per large. I don't know what the budget for the military is, but normally those are very huge ones. I will go back to the days in the 80s when we were visiting Northeastern, which was also another security zone. And everywhere there were policemen, APs, the normal policemen, armies were by the brackets. So a lot of those people had to be there to be sustained for them to stay. There was no way you could travel between 2 towns without an escort. So for that person to escort you from this town, from town A to town B, he would have to be paid a per diem, he would have to be paid a risk allowance, a number of other issues where that money could be utilized for something else. Presently, we also have a lot of conflict in the Baringo area. And for those who may have the chance to go there, you can actually see that development has actually almost come to a standstill. So what happens? Those people who are around there will always be in poverty. Okay. One of the other things is a lot of them end up being a lot of getting into poverty is quick rich schemes. And this unfortunately has come about due to, has been abated a lot in the cities, especially with the betting programs that are there. If you go into a lot of these places, you can see a lot of men just sitting around there and betting on horses that are in London. I have no idea who even a horse is, but the guy will be able to sit down and tell you who are these horses, what they can do, what they cannot do. Now, once you have all these calamities, lack of access to other things, lack of work, lack of water, lack of proper housing. So what does the man do? The man starts indulging, also could indulge into other addictive activities which are not good for him, the family, and the society at large. And the main addictive activity that is practiced by most men now is alcohol, drugs like Mira. Lately, there's a lot of heroin, especially down at the coast. There's a lot of this thing also in Nairobi, which we are not very much aware of. And these activities are the ones that end up leaving him in poverty. Of course, we have not forgotten about gambling. The other activity which we should not also forget is the sponsor syndrome that I talked about earlier on. Now, there are also some, like the next part, which is called to family and community. And these are some of the things also that also puts people into poverty. And into poverty somehow has its own kind of cycle that it keeps on coming round and round, and getting out of it is not very easy. And one of the causes of some of these early poverty cycles is early marriages. You find that a person is not prepared for family life. A person is not ready to be able to sustain himself. You find himself indulging into premarital sex, and they end up having a kid. Now, they have no way of looking after this kid. So the child may be left with the mother, or the two of them get together, but they cannot be able to give the child all the necessary items to be able to do. And if the person is able to do that, sometimes you find, because of his lack of education, you find the responsibilities that he is supposed to take, he cannot be able to do them because he cannot plan. He doesn't know there's something called planning. He doesn't know that he has to invest. All those are things that he finds himself not able to do. And this starts showing in the other children as they grow, into his own children as they grow up, because they don't have this item to do. Then you find, of course, we have the other thing is a number of them are absent. And this absenteeism causes a lot of confusion to the children. So they find that they cannot be able to understand why X has got a father, I don't. And this ends up being an issue for the child, in the sense that mentally now they're not prepared to be able to be satisfied with looking for things for themselves. So what happens? If one of those siblings from that family manages to make the rest of the other family members hang on to this one who has made. So this one who has made it out of poverty comes down, and they come down very seriously. Okay. Another problem that we've had recently, you may have seen a lot in the news, is the fighting for property once the parents have died. So you find most of these children, because they know their fathers have got quite a number of properties, they will not want to be able to work for it themselves. In fact, some of them go to an extra length to actually kill their parents to be able to get those the property for them to be able to live. Now, the other one I want to bring about is the mentorship. In society presently, right now, we don't have people we can look up in society per se and say, yes, if I look at Mr. X, I know that he's straight, he's upright, he's well endowed with different mannerisms and different issues that I know he can be able to handle. He's well looked upon society. We have our so-called politicians who many years ago we used to look at upon them, but presently we do not, and we cannot, and we should not, because a number of them, I wouldn't say all, a number of them have the same issues that we're talking about here. They have them with them. Recently, if you remember, there was a lady who came to court, went to court to take one of the members to parliament for child maintenance. So, and this is a senior member. So how does the person, give, what kind of picture does the person give? What kind of moral teaching does this child have? Then the other thing which has come up a lot, and this is something that we maybe as a society we have to look on, is that we have given so much of emphasis on the girl child, all the way back, all the way starting after the Beijing talks. And we've forgotten about the boy child. So the girl is empowered. She meets a guy who is not empowered. The guy is already intimidated by this strong lady who is empowered. So he just goes into his shell and just gives out what he feels that should be. I'll just give the little bit that I can have so that they can think I am a man around the house, but in actual fact, not there. The last one what I picked up was the dignity of the worker and the rights of workers. And because of this man in the environment he grew up in, he lacks the hard and soft skills of today. Especially the soft skills are getting more and more important in work. But these are not available to him. So what do? You cannot be able to move into to a higher scale of working. So you have to leave them to those whom you had already said they are the ones who can afford. They are the ones who can be able to live in society. So here we need to be able to come out with things that we can be able to prepare these young men for the job market. There was the youth fund, which was intentionally meant for that, but I don't see it being utilized in the proper way. Because what has happened now is that every youth comes out, I want to be an entrepreneur with no skills, with no training, nothing. So what happens? You give them that money, it comes, it goes, and it is lost. After COVID, of course, we know we have lost a lot of work. So a lot of men may be sitting at home doing nothing. We also lack proper equity and measurements in the workplace. You will find that we have very few who have a lot of money, and we have a lot who have very, very little money. And that should be something that should be able to be equalized. And when I say equalized, don't tell, I am not saying that A is equal to B and C equal to up to Z, that all of them are equal. No, depending on the work you do, be given a reasonable amount of money. Of course, why is there no work? Because there's nepotism, tribalism, corruption, and corruption, of course, it'll pop up in almost everything. And these are things that comes about. A lot of the men, as they normally say, men, we think in boxes. And that is one of our biggest issues. So we don't embrace new changes immediately. We take time to be able to do it. And during this time, we are being overtaken by other people, other communities. Of course, we have a lot of people who are still residing in the rural areas, but we have subdivided most of this land to small areas now that we can't use modern agricultural methods to be able to grow some of those things. So these are kind of things that we need to be able to see how we can be able to get them back onto place. Of course, if you don't have a proper job, there is no way you can be able to get access to banks and other collaterals to be able to get how to get money. So as I have, I think, about 3 slides to end, sister, so don't, okay. So we have, how do we get us out of poverty by the time, by 2030? Let us get equality in our workplaces, and let's have a representation for all. Let us not have where the political wing are the ones who are the only ones who are supposedly the thinkers, the doers, and the planners. Building resilience. Now, this is a little bit may look a little bit out here, but this is a lot more to deal with climate change, because if you know, as you can, was it last week, the president came up and said there is somewhere in the northern area where people are already beginning to suffer from the effects of drought. So if we have better planning on how to be able to look after this place, how to be able to, get it back so that it can be more productive, we will not have this poverty area all the time from that area. Now, this is a vital one. Increase access to holistic quality education. I'm emphasizing on holistic quality education because right now we have students who are in school, but it's more like a churning factory line conveyor belt, because we have so many people, we just push them out, push them out, but they are not having the proper education so that they can be able to think for themselves when they get out. They can be able to look at solutions, how to be able to sort out their problem. Food security, clean water, vital. Last month again, we got news that there is a dam in Machakos that gets water from Nairobi with already contaminated water. So what are we doing? That water cannot be utilized by anybody. Or we kill the people down there, and with us in here, we stay with good water. We should end wars and conflicts, especially in Eastern Africa and Central Africa. As I was saying, I was earlier on in that conference for the Jesuits today, and almost about 45 million people, refugees, are from the East African region: Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo. So you can imagine if all these people, we are spending money on places that is not what is theirs. Of course, we have to embrace modernity and go into microfinancing. We have to increase employment somehow or the other. One of the things that when IMF comes in, they always cut out the social safety network. And that is also another way of bringing us more into poverty. And if we always keep on running to them for money, they will keep on making sure that they keep us in poverty. World Bank and IMF are not here to help us to grow. They are there for their own needs. So we remember that we have to be able to end up ourselves. The next thing is, of course, right now we have a lot of incarcerations, especially due to the poverty levels, and also because people cannot be able to get their basic needs. And of course, the other thing is we have to be able to know is how we are going to reform our immigration. Measures to control poverty, corruption has to be raised. I don't know how it will be done, but it is something that has to be done. I was just doing a quick calculation the other day, and the president himself said we are losing about 2 billion shillings a day due to corruption. And when I did a sum up for the whole year, it's roughly about 720 billion. Our current budget is about 3 billion. So which means 1/3 of our billion is for corruption. So if we are able to save that 1 trillion, you can imagine how much development we can be able to have. We have to find ways to bring down our population, and the farmers who are there already have to be given modern techniques and ways of forming more food production so that we can be able to live a better and healthier life. Thank you for listening. Sister, I give it back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Lawrence, for that wonderful presentation, especially on the principles of Catholic social teachings that you have elaborated very well. I also today learned another new word, that is sponsor syndrome, that you presented very well. On one side, though, there's another side of it that I would like to maybe discuss with you later. It can go also the other way, because us even who live in the communities, we also depend so much on the donor funding that can also go under this umbrella of sponsor syndrome, so that we're not able to produce enough food for ourselves. But that will come later on the second part of our discussion. Now I would like just to give you a vote of thanks, and as you take virtually a glass of water during break, we will have a short clip, and then you'll be joined by another panelist, Michael Otieno. Kindly, we take a short break. Father George, maybe we can have a slide on.
Yeah.
Okay, I wish to welcome you again back to our session. I would like now to introduce our second panelist who is coming in. Just a moment. Okay. I would like to know whether Michael Otieno is in. Michael, are you in? Michael, are you in? Michael Otieno, are you in? Because I'm not able to see you in the list. Are you in?
I'm in, sister. Go ahead.
Okay. We are so Frank, you're going to be joined by Michael Otieno, who is going to give a short response to your presentation. I wish to introduce Michael Otieno. Michael Otieno Hamisi is a husband to Joanne, a father of 4, and in the picture we can see his 2 little children, Philothea, and of course the other one, I've forgotten his name. A parishioner of Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Church, Rongai, a member of liturgy in the parish. Michael holds a certificate in medical laboratory, is a trained catechist, works with the refugees, is trained also in psychosocial support with Israel Aid, and is also a youth trainer. Currently, Michael is doing business. Michael, you're most welcome. You can respond to the talk, some of the concerns or issues that you think you can engage Frank on, especially in dialogue in terms of poverty in the light of St. Joseph. Michael, you can proceed, please.
Now, I would like to start with
Michael, can you put your video on, please? Kindly put your video on. We want to identify the voice with the face, if possible. Michael, kindly put the video on. Are you able to do so or not? If you are not able to do so, kindly proceed.
Okay, fine.
Please proceed with your response.
My response is I've followed closely the first speaker, and he has touched almost everything in the area of the causes of poverty, and he has touched on the poverty, especially in the community in which I actually work, and I find it is.
Excuse me. You have two equipment side by side. Joanne and Andrew. You have to separate them.
Would you kindly move aside, Michael?
Yes.
Can you?
John has gone aside.
Okay, very good. Kindly proceed.
I think the echo is from your side because John is very far away.
Okay.
And now poverty, like we said, is having very resources for use for basic needs. And what comes out is that most people will live in need of meeting the basic needs, which is a challenge to everybody. So how can we go down to tackling the poverty issues in the Islam and the areas which are very very badly off in terms of even affording a meal a day. Because the bracket picture that he gives is the government plan and the statistics of what is there. But when it comes down to those who are living in poverty, it's not very easy to help tackle them. The second area is this morals that is degrading in the society because of poverty. What are they doing to tackle the morals or to address the moral degradation in the society at the village level or at the slum level? Now, I had prepared something about the life of St. Joseph after having read the book You, Joseph. And there are areas, the virtues that St. Joseph had, which we can emulate to help us tackle, live a simple life. Am I on?
You are on, you can speak.
Okay. Now, St. Joseph lived a very simple life. Example is when he was to go to Bethlehem, when he went to Bethlehem with Mary for census. There's a quote on page 159 of the book You, Joseph. Joseph and Mary willingly and out of their simplicity decides to lodge in a basement cave in their ancestral home, in Joseph's ancestral home. They insisted, though their relatives wanted them to live in a warm and where their relatives live in, but Joseph and Mary refused to do that because of their simplicity, and they decide to live, and Mary gives birth in a cave where animals were being taken care of. Now, this is what I think as Christians we can emulate, because most of the time when we live in low income generating, we find most of us actually in our minds, we live very high and we refuse to accept to live, to be contented with what we have. And this is the most dangerous challenge, like in the slum, and it causes conflicts and war. I remember when I was in Kakuma refugee camp, I was with a priest, and he wanted to go out to give food to the refugees as a way of helping them have their livelihood. And the food was very little, it was not enough. And I asked him, what are we going to do? Then he said, we have to give them very little, because the first step that the refugees can do is self-acceptance. They should accept themselves that they are refugees and they are in want, and they should only look for basic that can sustain them so that they live on until God maybe takes them away from that situation. So most of the time we find that many people live in poverty, but in their hearts they live in riches, which they can't merge and balance. Another example of St. Joseph is in the same book, when they went to offer sacrifice for the child Jesus in the temple. They decided to give pigeons as an offer, which was for the poor. But I read in this book that Joseph was not very poor as such, because he was hardworking and he had enough to live on, and actually he helped others like his brothers and siblings. The reason why he decided to give the total dove, and it is said, we could have offered a lamb as prescribed, but with our will to live a simple life, we just want to, what is necessary, we can make an offering of what the poor and identify ourselves with the poor. And this is a great lesson that we can learn from St. Joseph in his book. Now, long time I used to think, how is it possible that Joseph lived in Bethlehem, yet when it came to time of Mary giving birth, he goes back to his home country and they don't give him a room and he ends up in a cowshed. Now, this book tells me that Joseph was not very poor, but he decided to lead a simple life to identify himself with the poor. The first speaker talked about the people in the government. He talked about corruption. He talked about the government strategies of alleviating corruption and poverty. But how can we come from the statistics and the writings of the government, yet corruption still goes on? How can we help the poor people in the village and those who are in poverty-stricken situations? Now, poverty of spirit is the key thing here, because we have to think and live poverty from the heart so that we can address and identify ourselves with those who are poor, like St. Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your response to Frank Lawrence. I kindly now ask Frank Lawrence and Michael to be on board, because we have questions and dialogue to begin after this. And to just start the debate, Frank Lawrence, kindly put your video on if possible. My first concern basically is where I would like a clarification is in terms of the causes of poverty that Frank, you raised. And one of them was, population control. I'm a pro-lifer, so anything that touches human life really touches the hinges of my being. And I think from your presentation, you were trying to tell that we should families should know how to plan. Lack of planning is probably the cause of poverty. True, yes, but you also have to understand that in the Catholic Church, a child is a gift from God, and the God who gives gift to this child already provides for this child whatever is needed. And I don't know your reaction on this one, whatever is needed for the child to be. At the same time, when you talk about planning of our families to be able to sustain and they be able to outdo our poverty, we are talking about natural family planning, which is actually having a lot of objections because the church says no to contraceptive mentality with a reason. Why? Because contraceptive is basically contra life and contra the principles of unitive and procreative in the marriage, which actually God himself in Genesis blessed the couple to have. I know this is a funny issue, and I'm not putting you on the on spot, but I just would like to hear your comment on this one. Comment, especially when we come to the agenda of population control targeting. I know Africa, we are not populated. The problems of corruption is true, and probably that is what is making us not be able to share with each other. What is your comment on this one, especially vis-a-vis what the church teaches? And then one of the causes that you've listed is actually population control. Frank, maybe you can share with us there, and then I will introduce other questions.
Thank you, sister. I'm also a pro-life. And one of the things you may find out is that in most of the European countries, because of population control, their birth rate is actually now in most places at negative.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In Japan, apart from it being negative, majority of the population that is there is now the elderly in the 60s. So that is going to cause a bit of a problem in the next few years. Now, when we talk of population explosion, and I talk about controlling the population, I mean, there's got to be some reasonable balancing of what is there. What do I mean? I mean, I give you an example of that man at the age of 42 who has 10. Mm-hmm. He's in a foreign country, mm-hmm. and he's still expecting another group of children to be able to look after. Now, fine. All those children, as you said, they will be provided for. There's even that song that says, usiue mtoto yangu kwa sababu kila mtoto anakuja na sahani yake. Okay. And so this is some of the things that are there. But what it means now is that we as a church, we have to be able to go and promote natural family planning so that we can be able to get people to understand some of these things that are there so that we do not get that poverty cycle continuously going round and round. Because if you've had the chance to walk into an informal sector and you see the living conditions, I think you will be able to tell me, yes, let me see how best I can help these people in educating them to be able to listen. And if this now goes back, is tied again to education. Because people may go to school, yes, but they may not be educated. So that we need to educate them on the effects and some of the impacts that will have on their lives. I remember some time back, I went to another house, which is about 10 by 10, and there were 15 people staying in them. And I was wondering, how do they sleep? So I felt a bit embarrassed to ask them, but I did. And some were sleeping on the sofa, some were sleeping on the floor, some were sleeping on the bed. And I looked and said, is that the life I would like my children to live? No, I wouldn't. So I'm not saying the contrary, that we should go the complete way of artificial family planning, but we should go in a way that also we can be able to understand that we need to be able to move out of move towards that direction of natural family planning.
Thank you very much, Frank. I would now like to call our participants to join in a discussion. And I've lost quite a number of questions because I had to log in again. But I think there was a first question which came from Caroline, Mercy. Caroline and Mercy, you had a question. Kindly, would you ask your question before I pick the others? Your question was the first one. I lost it because I had to rechange again my login system. Caroline, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Kindly ask your question. There was a question from your end.
Yes, I'm joined here by Lucy and Mercy. And our question of discussion is that Frank has mentioned about generational poverty. And our question is, the society expects one of the successful members in a family to support the others, even when the other person is also struggling with the loans. When you don't support them, they feel like they're entitled to your support because you are successful. How do we then break the chain of poverty with such expectations? Thank you.
Frank, you can share, and then also Michael, you'll also chip in this question. Frank, you may start.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline, Lucy, and Mercy. It's one of those questions. I mean, it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Okay. And unfortunately, is that that is what society expects us. But now we have to be able again to educate them. Yes, this is how things should be able to be done and what. But there's a catch here, because to date I know that some families would be able to say that I know Caroline is the brightest of us here. So can we educate her to the highest level so that she can be able to help us? So you see, now what you have, unfortunately, what you have done is because of lack of education, you have put all your resources in one person. And we have disregarded Lucy or Mercy. But if we were able to share it equally between the three of you, the probability of you three doing quite well is quite high. And this now reduces the pressure on one person being the one to be able to do it. And if, for example, now if you look back and you see when we were those olden days when we were able to send people to the US, to go and study and then come back, and a lot of pressure was on them. So these guys, even if they didn't do well there, they would never come back because they knew that they're expecting the world from me, but I'm not. So it's a matter of educating again each person and trying to be able to see. It is not easy for the young ones to be able to show their parents because their parents are expecting this. Society is also expecting this. So it's a general wholesome education to the whole society that things are evolving and things have to change. I'm trying to look for an analogy that can be able to give a better answer, but it's not coming. But what I would say is, for me, if I was in that situation, I would first, if I was the one going and I was the one already there, before I start building myself, I will build another person from the family. And that person should be able to not take over, but be able to assist me in building up. One of the problems is, again, with us human beings, is when we reach a certain level, we forget where we came from and we don't want to help anybody else. So for me, if I would build one person, that would reduce my burden by a half, and that person builds another person, it will reduce mine a little bit more, and that is how I would look at it.
Thank you, Frank, for your response. Michael Otieno, what do you have to respond on this question? Do you have a contribution to make here?
Now, the generational
Poverty.
mostly you'll find that people move from one generation to the next, and those who have accepted the situation in which they are, and the society uplifts them, because there are many congregations, there are many NGOs which actually help support, alleviate sufferings and poverty, because poverty causes suffering in lives of people. So we have living examples, people from the slums. If they are dedicated and seek help, mostly they will find a way out. Recently I have a close relative from the slum who was actually living on one meal. He's now a priest. And because of his determination and seeking out help from others. So it is a society concern, and mostly you find people who are poor, if they are determined and they work hard, they will get themselves out of poverty. Not much so because the number of children are few, but because of the morals built in them and their bringing and acceptance of their situation as poor people, but determined to reach their goal.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I have a number of questions.
Sorry, sister, before you go on.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike, for that addition. For me, it's not only health, most probably will not get the person out of there. It is more of a mind change.
Yes, it's and mind attitude. Change and determination. And yeah.
Because once your mind changes in the sense that I know I am not supposed to be here, I need to go there to the next level, then you start moving and you can be able to. I know a couple of people who have been in the informal sector and they have moved out and they are doing very well because they have changed their mindset.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to ask Charles Maina, you have a question. Do you want to say it or do you want me to read it out for the people? Charles Maina, are you there?
Yes, sister, I'm here.
Yeah, can you just ask your question? We want to hear your voice also.
Thank you, sister. So my concern was what can men in church do, especially the CMA, because they are a pillar somehow in the church. But when many men joined these groups to probably to be helped in those ways, you find there are so many contributions towards some mega projects that may not affect the families directly and in a positive way. What can church or men do to help their families to come out of poverty, especially when they join these groups? That was my question.
Okay. Maybe I would like also to take another question so you can respond to them all together. There is a question from Philothea Mission Africa to Frank. It says that blessed are you who are poor, for the kingdom of God is theirs. Luke 6:20. In Jesus' mind, there is something positive about poverty. Could the speakers shed more light on this, please? So those two questions, maybe we could. The one for Charles, how can the CMA members within their group help their families come out of poverty? And also the question from Philothea Mission Africa, the poverty in spirit, the positive aspect of poverty in spirit that can also transform the material poverty that we are facing. Again, back to you, Frank and Michael.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you, sister.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like I'll start with minors about the contributions. First and foremost is, I would ask the question is, what was the initial intention of the person joining the CMA? The next question was he joining it to receive benefits, or was it him joining it to receive spiritual benefits? The first question should be, is he there to receive monetary benefits? And this is now some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves when we join a group. And I normally put it this way. If I join a sports club, why am I joining it? I want to join the sports club because of maybe fitness, maybe to meet people, or maybe I just want a place where I can be able to come and relax at different times. And most of it is whatever facilities they may have there for us to join. But when joining this club, there's a lot of rules and regulations that are there, which you may have to join. You have to follow. And this is the same thing when you join the CMA, there are rules and regulations that you have to join. To follow. And when you follow them, it makes your life a little bit more easy. Unfortunately, in this present day and age, especially since COVID came in, there's been a lot of reduction in finances or funds for different issues. I know for the CMA right now, they have that institute they are building in Hawaii. They have also the family day they had to give money, and that also has a lot of this thing. So it is you, depending on what I would say is, can you be able to not split yourself, but be able to say, okay, this is my priority first, then second, and that is, again, that comes to planning on what you want to do. And again, it's also the leadership in the CMA to be able to know, the people that are in my group, will they be able to give this? If, like, for example, you're in South B, I know because you're my neighbor. If majority of my members are from the informal sector, if I have 3 funds at the same time, will they be able to sustain it? No. So as a leader, you should be able to know how you can be able to get these people to give these things, once one, then the other one, and then the other one, for you to be able to meet the target, whatever it is. Yes, the next one is blessed is the poor.
Positive aspects.
Okay. And I look at this, actually, I looked at this earlier on during the day. One of the things that I think, this is my thinking, I am not sure whether it is correct, but when Jesus was talking about blessed is the poor, I don't think he was just talking about poor in material things. Okay, Jesus was talking more about the poor spiritually. Because when you are poor and spiritually, that means you are an empty vessel. There's nothing in you. And you are always ready to receive. It's like a sponge when it is dry. It will receive anything, any water that is around it and be able to build up. While for a sponge that uses water, it won't take in any more water. So that is what will happen. But looking at it from, again, now if we look at it in the perspective of where we are discussing now, we look at it from the point of view is that when you also have a lot of material and monetary wealth, one of the first things you don't even think about is the other person. Generally, it is about yourself. And this is one of the things that COVID brought us. Somebody said it was an equalizer. Because before that was, I was in London last week, I'm going to Australia next week, I'll be going to the US after that. And those are the kind of things that was there. But you'll not hear anybody talking about how can I be able to move and see how I can help my neighbor who is just maybe a couple of meters from my doorstep? How can I be able to help him? So that is now how I would look at it from the both sides. Sister, I hope I've answered.
Yes, I am just wondering that how you are speaking and then responding to our question at the same time. It just baffles me how you are able to manage the two. Normally, I know men only use one side of the brain, but you're able to juggle the questions. You're also responding to them in writing, and you're responding to us in speaking. This is something very interesting. Okay, thank you very much, Frank. Michael, do you have any contribution on the two questions?
Now, it is apparent that most of the groups that we have in the church, like CMA and CWA and other groups, they have social classes. That is, people of the same status. So the most important thing is that we should have education to change their way of thinking so that what they have can benefit, and they should know. I think it comes well when we talk about spiritual poverty, which I will respond to later on. Now, if you have a spiritual poverty, that is, you are poor at heart, you are not attached to the wealth that you have, and you can, it's known that it's God who gives. And if God has given you, then he has given you to help you live well and also share with others. So the spirit of sharing should come in these groups. Most of them, actually, as Charles has said, they help where their status are.
Okay.
And which is wrong. So something should be done so that what they have can benefit the church, and can benefit the church is actually the community of believers, of which they should channel. If you have, then you should channel what you have to the less fortunate in the society. Now, the spiritual poverty and the material poverty, they are also linked in my view, because if you are poor at heart, then you are not attached to material wealth. I think the religious, you know very well, you take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And there's a saying that the church is more richer than the clergy are maybe more richer than the laity. And the key thing there is that they are not attached. There's a priest who once said that for a missionary, home is foreign and foreign is home. I think he's hearing me. I remember that quote when he was being transferred from one parish to another. So the attachment to wealth, that is what is more important, and we should learn that it is not good to attach ourselves to material wealth. We should use them for helping where necessary. Thank you.
Talking about the church is rich, I have with us here quite a number of priests are on board. I see the hand of Father Limukani. Father Limukani, you are all the way from Zimbabwe. Kindly ask your question. Father Limukani.
Thank you, sister. It's not a question as such, but I'm just curious to know if I can share with you my little experience about poverty. I've come to believe that, especially in Africa, poverty is mainly caused by lack of knowledge or ignorance, not in ignorance in an intellectual sense or academic sense, but somebody who doesn't know that there's gold behind their house and they die in the house out of poverty. I've seen many people really in Africa, or our politicians, make us not know reality and the truth. Even where do I access this? And what should I do when I'm in need of this? And you find so many people will be coming to the church as if the church is now the government itself. I don't know how we can handle that situation. I've seen it as the major challenge really to our poverty.
Okay. Thank you,
sure.
Father Limukani. We'll bring it into discussion. I would like to bring another Tulu. Is Tulu. Crispin Tulu, you have also a contribution to making more or less close to what Father is saying. Then I will give a chance to others. Would you kindly share your contribution? Crispin Tulu.
Yes, sister. Thank you. Mine was not a contribution as such, but it is in form of question. Since as the issue of poverty is concerned, and most of the families in Africa where poverty is found, these people most of the time are raised, or they are, of course, they are raised in this way. They grow believing that for them to do away with poverty, there must be someone to help them. So in this case, this belief can be even transmitted from one generation to another. It becomes very difficult for these people themselves to struggle to do away with poverty. How can you help these people to eliminate this kind of thinking and find that they are themselves concerned or responsible doing away with poverty and living the good standard of life? That's my question.
Okay, so Frank and Michael, the two questions, one from Father Limukani, he was saying about lack of knowledge is a major contribution to our poverty, and the one that is also being given to us by Crispin Tulu. What are your comments and your sharing on these two? Frank, kindly unmute your microphone.
Yeah, thank you, sister. I think for Crispin, the answer was already given earlier on when I talked to Charity, Lucy, and Mercy. And it is, when you talk of a generation, it is normally about 3 or 4 generations that has, when you find that problem has been perpetuating downwards. Now, it will take also an equal amount of time upwards to change that mentality. And that mentality can only be changed by changing the mindset and the attitude on how to look at other people. And unfortunately is that society, there are people in society, I won't say society in general, there are people in society who would always want to see that there are people down there. There are 2 types of people. There are those who do it out of their own selfish needs because they will know that they need a group of people who look up to them as giving up their arms and things like that. Then there are those who look at them as a way of, looking at them in such a way that they cannot be able to find out how they can be able to help them. Let me give you an example. Some time back, I had sent out a request to my friends about the girls' rehab that I'm working with, that we needed clothes. And a lot of them telling me, I have so much, but I didn't know that there is a need for them by somebody, and I didn't know how to get them. So already when I gave them that bridge that they can be able to take it, it was already immediately sorted out. And that is because now I've changed their mindset that there is nobody to be able to take these things. So a lot of it is a matter of how do you change the mindset, the mindset. And as I said, it will not take a short time. It is something that will take quite long because you have to change a couple of. And the other way you can be able to, because most of us as human beings, we are visual, we can only change our mind if we see somebody who came from us and was able to change and be something different. I'll give another example there. When Lupita managed to get an Oscar award, a lot of other girls now said, if she can make it as an actor, also we can. So a number of them got into it. But before then, everybody had shunned the idea that they can be able to make it in the acting industry. Lack of knowledge. Father, lack of knowledge is how we start our education system. And that is why I said earlier on when I gave my talk about quality, holistic education. In majority of the education systems that we have, it is knowing, it is remembering and recalling so that we can be able to utilize them in being able to sort out issues. So we only end up coming to be users of the knowledge, but not recalling the knowledge, sorry, not users. We're only recalling the knowledge that we had. The World War II was in 1918, yes, so what? How did it help me? Has it helped me in any way? But if I know what happened during the World War, sorry, 1918 was World War I. If I can be able to learn a lesson from the World War I, World War II, then that helps me to understand how I can be able to do. We take the recent episode that is there. The Americans removed the Taliban to put the Taliban back again. In the 20 years that they were there, a lot of things they did not learn. Because when they were there, a lot of the things they were doing was not for the people, but for themselves. And we would have expected the Americans after the Vietnam War, they would have learned a number of these things so that they can understand, yes, we lost the Vietnam War because of ABCD. So when we go to this next war, let us not do the same thing. So it's how that knowledge that we are giving or imparting to our younger ones, how they are being imparted. I hope I have answered.
Yeah. I hope so, Father Lukami. I think Frank has answered you, and if you're not content, I'll be more than willing to share his email so that you can continue the dialogue. The time is running up. I'm only giving chance for 2 more questions. One from Dr. Alan Bogo and another one from Adeline Vera Akoth. You have a question. Adeline, kindly start with your question, and then Dr. Alan Bogo, you'll give us your last question. Adeline Vera, are you there, Akoth? Maybe she's not there, but I can read her question so that maybe we can. My thoughts is for us to reduce poverty and some of the ills in our society, corruption must be eliminated because it seems it's the root of most of our problems because corruption is in every level. What is your thoughts? So I think he's asking your thoughts on corruption. And then Dr. Alan Bogo, kindly ask your question. I'm sure you're here so that they can be answered together.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wanted to say that about education and poverty, the most important effect is not only the education in the formal sectors as school, but is the fact that the children end up being in the street for any kind of vices or for prostitutions. That is one of the important effects that we should emphasize on it. And other cause for this situation most of the time is not because parents are poor, because they cannot get a job, but a result of children that are not born in the normal structures of a family. So that to say that one of the reason of the poverty that lead to such kind of consequence in the society is the fact that young girls or young boy and girl in the casual relationship just meet, and then they don't think about the consequence of being together, and then the children are there and there is nobody to take care of it. So to tackle that poverty will not be only a matter of giving job, but for children to be educated in the family, so that they have children in the normal circumstances to avoid such situations. And there, I was saying that the role of the church, because we are talking about Saint Joseph, the role of the church is so important in helping a Christian, whether young or adult, in matter of family, and I know that's what Philotea, thank God, is have it really as the main interest, and to fight against that poverty. One of the best ways what Philotea is doing in helping young people to build a normal family, that we don't have children that do not have parents that can take charge of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alan Bogo, and also Adeline Vera Coates for your question. Frank and Michael, maybe you can respond to those two. Those are going to be our last question. Then I'll give the floor to Father George for concluding remarks.
Okay, thank you. First, I'll start with Alan because that is quite an easy one. Easy in the sense of talking, but difficult in implementing. Now, anybody you ask them, they will tell you, yes, we know corruption is the main problem we have. How to eliminate it is the problem. And you see, when you look at corruption, corruption does not mean that it's only an exchange of money. It's also an exchange, it could be also theft of time, theft of knowledge, theft of different issues. You could have them. And I will give you an example, which sometimes may not sound very nice, but it is something that is there. Before Matiang'i came, we used to have a lot of A's in Form 4s. But after Matiang'i came, they has been more regulated. And now we are almost, I think we are back to normal. But when you look at that and you may be wondering, why am I bringing about those A's? It's because we as parents, we had forced our children that they have to be able to get good marks, to be able to get into a university, to be able to get a job. So a lot of the parents were not even were willing to pay any amount of money to buy papers so that our children can go to the university. And when they get to the university, they are not capable of being there. We even buy the lecturers there who will pass these students. Now, you can imagine you're passing a student who, I'll just give an example, is a doctor. This is a person who is dealing with a human life. The person is not prepared to become inside there, to be a doctor. The person is not knowledgeable enough to become a doctor. So what happens? You start having all sorts of ailments. They may not kill the person, because what they'll do is give them medicines. They know it will do some work, but it will not clear the problem. So you end up having a lot of people now having resistance to the cheap drugs, and you have to go and buy more expensive drugs. So when you have that expensive drug, isn't that another form of corruption? Because that is theft. You should not have been there. So that is corruption is something that has to be. We go again. I love my friend COVID. we had the cancer scandal that was there, which has not been sorted up to today. But you are finding you are able to, somebody buying a mask at, was it 450 shillings one? So how much can you buy for the amount of money you have so that you can be able to provide with the frontline workers? A lot of frontline workers were dying because they didn't have some of these basic tools. So that is another effect of corruption. Now, we can go back further down. When you find that, for example, that food that was supposed to be distributed to the people who are not able to, but because you are one in charge, you have the knowledge, you take that money off or the food away from those people, so those children cannot be able to eat. That child gets, what do you call this, malnutrition. If it takes a long time, you may end up having them with kwashiorkor, and then you find another problem again. So those are kind of things that happen, and we have to be able to know. Corruption has to be sorted out somehow or the other. So then I go to Dr. Mbogo. I hear your statement about the children who are from the the children from the streets. Luckily enough, I have worked with two. I've worked with the boys and I've worked with the girls. So I know some of the things that happen. And one of the things that happen is not that they have nobody to look after them. They have their parents, they have their grandparents, or they could have their neighbors to look after them. But majority of them, their life is not sustainable. What I mean by that is, for example, they may be not going to school continuously because maybe the parents does not have those fees to be able to pay. We normally charge, I don't know, firewood, some other ones will charge maybe for food, somebody will charge for something else, and the parents doesn't have. So those children are in school one term, the other term they're not there. So they get fed up and they go out into the street because they meet somebody who tells them the street in the life is very nice. We can do what we want, eat what we want, but they do not know the difficulties that are there. Now, for the girls, it's even worse because once the girls get out onto the street, a number of them are raped, a number of them end up being street mothers, and that gets another solution, it gets another headache bigger than what we expect. So here it was talked about parenting. And parenting, I think it's not only for the informal sector, it is for everybody in our society. And you will find actually that the rich to do have very little parenting that they do, because most of the time they are out there looking for the money. So you get up in the morning, the child goes to school, somebody else is the one who prepares them, they go to school, either there's a driver outside to take them or they have a school bus, they go, they come back in the evening, you are not back there. Around 10 is when maybe the parents are there, so they are sleeping. So there is no interaction with that. So the parenting now becomes an issue. And these are issues, we can be able to see them. A lot of the schools that were banning 2 years ago was because of some of this parenting. The person wants to be where he wants to do what he wants. Because when I was at home, I could sit down what I want, when I want, I do, eat when I want, I can do what I want. When you go into a school environment, you are told, no, these are the norms and the rules that you have to follow. So they do not want to follow it. So these are kind of things that now end up finding a problem in the whole society because of the parenting. Of course, the church is there to help us. And unfortunately, even the Bible says, what is the word now? looking. I have very few workers. I don't know the exact words. There are very few workers, but the field is full of. Sister, maybe you can help me there.
The harvest is rich. The laborers are few.
The laborers are few, and something is a lot. Okay, so the church has got very few laborers. The priest himself, for example, let's just take here South B. We have about 3 priests, and we have over 2,000 adults. So that means if I take an average of 4, so that means about 8,000. So we're talking of a community of about 10,000 people, and you only have about 4 to take care of them. So that cannot be possible. So this is where we have groups like Philothea, who have some of the Christians whom they can be able to train and bring them on board and give that training so that they can be able to bring these children to a certain level of understanding, some morality, some ethical ways of living. And that is where it is now, when we come out from here, Sister may approach somebody, can you be able to deal with this group of people? You say, yes, I can be able to deal with them. I can help them in this way. I can help them in that way. So I'm not very sure, Dr. Bogo, if I have answered you.
Dr. Elaine?
Yeah, that is fine.
Yeah, can that do for now? Thank you. Yeah, okay. So thank you, Frank. I don't know, Michael, are you still there? Can you just put one word as we conclude? Your concluding words, Michael?
My concluding words is that everything that we do have a positive and a negative part of it. And whatever we go through, poverty can lead to even diseases or death or something like that. And poverty can make us very humble and depend solely on God, and God will lift us up. This needs a psychosocial support, like the groups where you start from your family and the small Christian community and the church, and it can be disseminated into the whole of the world so that we eradicate, or rather reduce, suffering which is caused by poverty and the negativity that people think about poverty. Poverty, if I think from the Bible, I will not quote, but from the Bible, if God wants to train or even prepare for the birth of somebody that will carry out his work, he would put him or her very simple and in poor condition, but give the heart to strain to work hard and to rely on God, and God's grace is in the middle of negative effects of poverty and positive effects of poverty. When God's grace is there, even when we are poor, we are very rich and will move towards riches. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and Frank, for your elaborate discussion presentation. Ours is to pray for you that you continue the good work. You are the eyes and the hands of the church wherever you are ministering. And as you said, it is important for us to change our mindset as far as poverty is concerned, and we need to move towards that direction. At the moment now, just a little bit of communication from my side, and basically on announcements that I want to make before I call our spiritual director. And I would like to start with the announcement of You Joseph. We have You Joseph book, which is still on. Frank, you had a chance to really discuss this into depth using the Capuchin TV, and I think it was quite a good response, enlightening, and I think we have grown with your discussion on You Joseph. At the same time, also, we would like you to visit our website, www.philotheamission.org, to be able to know more about our presentation, even whatever the talk today is going to be downloaded into our website. See more about us on our website. Also, we seek your support. If you're touched by what we do, kindly support us so that we may have these programs running. Our pay bill is $763.19. And the next next seminar talk will be in October 2nd at the same time, and it will be St. Joseph Creative and Courageous Fatherhood as Protect and Guide and Provider of the Family. We'll have the key speaker, Mr. Samuel Kanja. Kindly at this moment, I congratulate you and thank you very much, Frank and Michael, for giving us the honor to listen to you and to learn from you. Indeed, we've learned a lot from the remarks I see from the chat. We cannot exhaust all the questions. People are asking for question presentations. I will make arrangement and send to them and also keep them in touch with you. So where we did not respond, maybe you are able to respond to them via their email. And now I call upon our spiritual director, Father George, to kindly give us a concluding prayer. Father George. Father George, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Kindly lead us in a word of prayer.
Yes. So thank you very much to Mr. Frank and Michael for your presentation, for all the participants. And I want, as a prayer, I want to remind ourselves about two Psalms. One Psalm is Psalm 37. I was touched by one of the questions that was raised about corruption, and from the speaker also. Psalm 37, the first verse of Psalm 37 says, "Do not be provoked by evildoers. Do not envy those who do wrong. Like grass, they wither quickly. Like green plants, they wilt away." Verse 16, "Better the poverty of the just than the great wealth of the wicked. The arms of the wicked will be broken. The Lord will sustain the just." Verse 25, "Now I am old and I have grown old. Neither in my youth nor now in my old age have I ever seen the just abandoned, or their children begging for bread. The just always lend generously, and their children become a blessing." And I would like to pray for all of us that we may have a heart that moves to the poor, those who are suffering, especially the children in need, and we may share whatever we have with them. At the same time, we may remain just. We may not be overcome with thoughts of jealousy, thoughts of anger against those to do unjust things, but instead know that just will always triumph, and the poor people, those who are poor in spirit, poor in heart, they are the ones who will possess the kingdom. And we pray the words that we heard this day in this sharing may take root in our hearts, and we may remain at the side of Jesus, who loved and cared for the poor. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Let us bless the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you a blessed weekend. Thank you so much. A blessed Sunday.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
Now.